couple of weeks ago I thought I'd go out and shoot some hints and tips about photographing a sunset. Had a look at the weather forecast, we checked to see what was going on. The weather conditions looked quite good, there was a few clouds in the sky, a bit of moisture in the air, which usually helps sort of pimp up the colours a bit. But it didn't actually deliver. Now I was very tempted to delete the footage and just write it off as a bad job, as a waste of time. And then I thought, what about all the times when you possibly make the effort to go somewhere after work or whatever, and the same thing happens to you, it doesn't quite deliver? Because there's a temptation to think, well, it doesn't matter, I'll mend it in Lightroom or something. In my experience, this doesn't really work that well. You can fix things to an extent, but it's never going to be great. Do you know what I mean? You really do need to be in the right place at the right time to get something really good, and then you can take your raw file into post-production, and then you can really make the best out of that. Now some of you at this point may be thinking, yeah, I don't want to do post-production, I want to get it right in the camera. But here's the thing, there's post-production done on your raw file no matter what. It's just a case of whether you do it or whether you allow your camera to do it for you. I'm going to say a bit more about it in a minute when you see the actual shoot video. So this is going to be a two-parter. In this part, I'm going to show you the shoot we did. I'm going to show you the disappointment of it not really quite delivering the goods, and you're going to see a shot that I took in the same location maybe 4 or 5 months ago when the conditions were absolutely perfect. So I'm going to show you some unprocessed raw files as well as the ones that I've processed. You're going to see those in a minute, and then in part 2 I'm going to go through them in Lightroom with you and just explain and show you that yeah, it's okay, but it's still never going to be as good as the good one when the situation was right. So in this one it's about thinking the shot through using your 7 building blocks of photography, how to find the settings and all the rest of it, and if you're not too sure about those, ultimate beginner's course. Enjoy the film, guys, and I'll see you in part 2 when we have a look at the raws. Isn't it half chilly standing here? But I thought I'd come out here anyway because the weather forecast said the conditions were really good for a great sunset. That's why I'm in silhouette. You've got a bit of orangey stuff going on up here in the sky. Now often the best time to shoot a sunset, in my opinion, is before the sun has gone over the horizon. I'm going to move around a bit so you can see me. But you never quite know. Now the weather forecast said we're probably going to have some great conditions for a sunset. There's a bit of haze in the air, there was supposed to have been some cloud, and I thought, well, that'd be really cool. It didn't say much about wind. Wind is a nuisance because we've got ripples on the water here, and if you haven't got ripples here, you get a lovely mirror reflection of these trees over there. This is a shot I took down here only 2 months ago. Okay, it's the right conditions, and this is about being in the right place at the right time for a sunset. The other thing in looking at this image, you can see that it's not just a sunset. I think sunsets look much better when you include something in the picture, something of the surroundings, something of the area. So like in this shot, we've got reflections going on in the water because there wasn't a breath of air. Right now, I don't think conditions are brilliant, but I thought we'd come down here and I'll just talk you through the thought process of shooting a sunset. You know, what would I compose the shot as? What are my options here? And then we'd have a look at how do you expose for it. We may get a good shot, we may not. But if we don't, then let's make the best of a bad job, because there's going to be lots of times when you're going to think, oh, I'm going to stop on the way home and see if I can photograph the sunset. Sometimes it doesn't happen. It happens to the best of us. So what would my options be? Let's have a little look, and I'm going to film a bit of video in here and we'll stick it as an inset. Now, there's obviously so many ways you can go about this. Let me see what I can do to get a bit of video rocking and rolling. I hit the video button. There we go. Now, I could be sort of just putting the horizon through the middle there, but it's not terribly exciting. But I kind of like these trees over here. I like this little clump, and I like the sun. Now, just having sort of, you know, maybe something like that, just sunset and water's all right, but it's not terribly exciting, is it? So how about if we come over here and include some of this clump of trees and a little shortening of focal length, and that's looking a little bit more interesting, isn't it? But it's not great. Now, what could we do? Look what we've got down here. We've got a puddle. So I'm going to move back. I'm going to make, Paul Simon, don't fall over that thing behind you. Good, good. I'm going to come here and just sort of get a bit lower. So if I can put this puddle into the foreground and just sort of shorten the lens. So look, if I shorten the lens, There we go, we're getting a bit of puddle there. And as I tweak it in a bit more, there we go. We've got another element to our composition. So something like that might work. Now then, I think that is probably what could be good as a composition. If we're lucky, if I can get lower, we may even pick up a little bit of red if some of that happens. I'm not convinced it's going to happen because we've got this low-lying haze. As I said a moment ago, I think often the best time to shoot a sunset is when, shall I move around to the side? You can see me a bit better. I think often the best time to shoot a sunset is when the sun is still in the sky. Shoot into the sun. Now that can present some exposure problems, but it's not really that difficult. But I may be wrong, and tonight it could be a case of when the sun has dipped below the horizon, it will set the sky on fire. I don't know, but it will mean everything else is going to be in silhouette. It virtually is now. So how would I expose for a shot like this from here going straight into the sun? Well, let's get my puddle back. I'm going to have to go into silhouette again for a moment, viewers, unless you want to come around to the side, Simon. It's up to you, mate. He's gone around the side. I do have a voice. I do have authority. He's laughing at me. So, let's see. We've already seen the composition, so how would I expose? Well, the first thing I do is just let the camera do it on its own. I use evaluative metering mode almost all the time, so it's measuring the entire scene. Now I know the sun's going to affect that, and it may make it dark, but because of our composition, we've got a lot of the surroundings in there, and there's some very dark tones there. They're going to compensate for the brightness of the sun and force the camera to brighten it up a little bit. Now I say force the camera, but it will tell the light meter what to do. So my starting point would be to expose using all over exposure mode. What's it called? Evaluative. And then have a look and see what it looks like. Check the histogram. Let's just shoot a shot. So what am I using? I'm going to use a smallish aperture, f11. I've got a 200th of a second shutter speed. I'm at 24 millimeters, I guess, on a crop sensor, for those of you who worry about such things. I'm going to focus out on the lake somewhere, and there's my composition. Let's just take a shot. So I take a shot and then have a look and see what my histogram has to say about it all. Histogram says it's all a little bit dark. The silhouettes are quite dark. There are some mid-tones there, but that's probably mostly sky. There's a very small spike on the right, which is going to be the sun burnt out. Now the sun's going to burn out no matter what. The sun always does burn out, but it is suggesting to me I can move my histogram to the right. I can bring in a bit more shadow detail, and then in post-production, in Lightroom, I can then bring those back up because I'm shooting raw. I always recommend shooting raw and then making your own JPEGs. There's almost no such thing as an unprocessed picture straight from a camera, because your camera will shoot a raw and then it will process that into a JPEG. So some post-production has happened, it's just the camera's done it instead of you. I'd rather do it myself. Okie doke, so let me increase my exposure a bit. I'm shooting in aperture priority mode, and I'm going to take it up 2/3 of a stop and just have another little look. You know, take some test shots. Don't think you've got to do everything all in one go and get it perfect. 2/3 of a stop. That has lifted my histogram off to the right quite a lot. We've got a little bit of a spike going on, but it's not bad. I think 2/3 of a stop is probably enough, because I know that in Lightroom I can bring those highlights down a bit and brighten up those shadows a bit. So now I kind of know what my composition's going to be for this particular shot. It's just a waiting game, so I'll check back in with you in a moment. We'll see what happens as the sun gets a bit lower. Maybe just as it starts to kiss the horizon. You see the trees over there, we've got this light path sort of running. Let me come over here a bit. We've got a light path running behind me up to the sun, and you can just see the trees on the far side of the pond there. As the sun comes down to kiss those, it may look a bit better. So I'll check in with you in a moment, guys. The sun is now just kissing the top of those trees. Let's take another shot and just have a look and see how it looks. We still haven't got anything too exciting. There's a bit more colour just starting to happen up there. I think I may have moved a little. No, that's okay. And just always keep an eye on your exposure. I'm now down to a 45th of a second. The light levels have dropped. The differential in the exposure compensation should still be the same. I'm still plus point, two-thirds of a stop. Let's just take the shot and compose it up nicely. See what we've got. I'm not sure. If I flick between the two shots, there's not a great deal to choose between them, to be honest with you. Colour-wise, it doesn't look much different. The sky is a little nicer, possibly in the second shot. We'll have another look in about 5 or 10 minutes' time and just see if we get a bit more colour going on. We're getting a bit of colour start to happen. I keep forgetting where I was standing because we keep going and hiding in the car. Just keep warm. So it's cold. I don't know how cold it is, but it's cold. Let's get down here and recreate the same composition that we had before. It was something like that. Now I think we got a bit more colour going on in the sky. Now, just now when I pressed the button, I don't know if you heard it in the video, but I heard my shutter was slow. It sort of went click as opposed to click. So when I check this, and it's down to a 15th of a second. So I need to speed it up a bit to make sure I don't get camera shakes. I'm not using a tripod. I love a tripod, but I'm not using one right now. So let's just open up the aperture. Let's just get a bit more light coming in. Now I'm gone to f7 thereabouts. It isn't going to make much difference to depth of field because my lens isn't particularly long. I'm focusing sort of at the infinity point or beyond, which is probably where that puddle is. So depth of field isn't an issue here. I'm using my aperture as an exposure control, not a depth of field control. I could, of course, also change my ISO if I wish, because I'm down at 200 still, to try and keep colours. Right, let me just take another shot with the shutter just that little bit faster. I am in the wrong place. I need to move a bit because my puddle isn't quite where I want it. That's better. Now then, let's get my copse of trees, how I want that, and what do we got? Histogram saying I could brighten it up a little more, which is probably a good idea because even though looking in the back of the camera, this looks quite bright. In the post-production, I'll pull it down again. You don't want to go brightening up dark things in post-production because it makes them go grainy. You're much better to darken bright things. So long as you haven't clipped the data off on the bright end, you can do that really easily. So I'm going to increase my exposure a bit. I was on 2/3. I'm going to go to a full stop over. Just take another shot, have a look, see what it looks like. You can always delete the ones you don't want. If I flick between those, the histogram, it moves over to the right a bit. I don't think we're going to get anything better than what we've got now. So it really is, I think, a case of making the best of a bad job. So in part 2, let's go and have a little look at these in the computer in Lightroom and see what we can do about them. They're probably not images that I would personally want to keep or use because I know it could be so much better. But let's imagine the scenario. You've gone on holiday somewhere and this isn't just a pond down the road from where you live, which it is for me. This is somewhere really special and you're not likely to be going back that way again. So let's have a look and I'm just going to see what we can do to improve on this a bit. See you back at the office next time.